such an odd little school. Hello there. I didn't see you there. The name's Supersonic Mikey, and welcome to the cleverly named Mikey's Reviews, where I review them and tell you my thoughts. In today's case, we're going to be reviewing some games. What kind of games? Well, for today's case, we're going to be reviewing Treasure Planet on the... wrong game. Treasure Planet for the PlayStation 2. Now, I used to love the movie Treasure Planet, and I still do. Heck, it's one of my #1 favorite Disney movies of all time. Now, with all nostalgia aside, is the game Treasure Planet any good? Well, let's find out right now. But first, let's take a look at the instruction manual.
Remember back when instruction manuals were actually cool and were relevant? Yeah, I miss those times. I wish they brought them back. Like, look at that. This took a lot of effort to make. It looks so stylized. I actually like it. It even shows all the enemies. What? Tortilla? Like the chips? Whatever. Ah, man, this is really fun, but I should probably get to the game. Yeah, let's do that.
Anyways, enough chit-chatting. Let's start talking about the actual game. Now, without any further ado, let's play! Hello everybody, and welcome to the first installment of Mikey's Reviews, where I review and tell you my thoughts. I'm your host, Supersonic Mikey. Now, to step back into reality for a brief moment, just because something is great doesn't mean it's always going to be successful. For example, one of my all-time favorite Disney movies, Treasure Planet.
I still remember memories of me being a young little kid, always watching old Disney movies off of VHSs from my grandma's house, and stumbling upon a trailer for this film. And actually, now that I think about it, it was barely even a trailer, actually. It was just a bunch of scenes from the film to show off its cool and creative visual design, attitude, and sense of adventure. I didn't manage to see this during release date because, well, this was released in 2002, and I wasn't even born, but when I got the chance to see it, younger me was blown away. Heck, I even watched it a few times this year, and I still love it today. Unfortunately, this wasn't everybody's side of the story. Back then, Disney screwed over its marketing and decided to switch their studio from 2D to 3D animation, which caused this movie to be one of their box office bombs.
Yeah. Sucks that this was one of Disney's biggest box office bombs. At a budget of around $140 million, it managed to only rake in about $110 million. Yikes.
However, if you want to learn more about the movie's history and why it flopped, I suggest watching a video about it on YouTube. I'll even put some links in the description below. Now, despite it being a flop, I still love this movie. Another thing is, back then, the gaming industry also kind of had a thing for adapting anything that sneezed its way into the general direction of the silver screen into an interactive experience. And when I discovered that there was a game for Treasure Planet, I did the best that I could to let my parents know how much I wanted it. Oh god, my poor parents. I love you guys. As Christmas rolled in, I got a PlayStation 2 with a copy of Treasure Planet, which leads to the topic of today's video. Is this game any good? Let's find out. Grab your maps and start setting your sails, cause we're about to dive into the centroid of the mechanism and review Treasure Planet for the PlayStation 2. The game was released in November of 2002, the same time as the films released, and developed by a company known as Bizarre Creations, who were responsible for a few games like Blur, Fur Fighters, and 007 Bloodstone. There's also a short behind-the-scenes documentary showcasing the details of the game's creation, which I can provide a link in the description below if you guys are interested. I will say though, the audio and video quality haven't aged well. Literally, it looks like f***ing YouTube videos from 2005, but it's still worth watching.
Just like any other game, I'm gonna review this in different categories, starting with the story, then to the gameplay, and then to the graphics, the soundtrack, and, well, I'll go from there. Right now, let's start off with the first category.
Starting with the story. Since this is a movie licensed game, I won't be going through the plot as much, but basically, the plot of the game is basically the plot of the film. Treasure Planet is a sci-fi adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. Jim Hawkins, a young teenager, has grown into an isolated troublemaker due to his father leaving him. Jim is also warned by a guy named Billy Bones to beware the cyborg and gives Jim a treasure map. A map to the legendary Treasure Planet. So him and his friend Dr. Delbert Doppler hire a crew to go on a quest to find Treasure Planet. During the journey, Jim meets up with a bunch of new faces like Captain Amelia, John Silver, and the marooned robot Ben. Jim also goes through lots of character development in this fun intergalactic adventure film. I won't go through the rest of the plot because I want you guys to experience this movie. It's really worth watching. While the game does derive its plot from the film, hell, it even uses clips from the movie to establish certain locations and events, however, some details are oddly skipped, specifically the scenes with Billy Bones and how Jim got the map, but more criminally, Jim and John Silver's relationship that holds the heart of the damn film. Alright, so when we begin the game, we're given a quick rundown as to how the notorious Captain Nathaniel Flint once annihilated ships all across the galaxy and would mysteriously vanish without a trace. Nobody knew how he was able to do this, but legends say he would always retreat to Treasure Planet to stash the loot of 1,000 worlds. While on the search for Treasure Planet, Jim and Dr. Doppler discovered that the map device creates portals that can be used to travel through different worlds. But here's the catch. In order to activate new portals and find their way to Treasure Planet, Jim must perform certain tasks at each location they reach and activate these ancient navigational beacons. Once enough beacons are activated, new portals will open up and the crew will be able to find their destination. The tasks that the player will perform can range from collecting 100 doubloons scattered throughout the levels, racing against the clock on the Solar Surfer, or any random mission depending on what stage you're playing. So the structure of this game is oh, my bad. The structure for this game is actually not that bad. However, it does bring up one major question that I constantly ask myself when playing this game. Why do we need a crew or even a ship for this shit? I mean, it makes sense in the film, but that's because the characters don't even know that the portals exist until the very end of the movie, played like a big reveal. However, in the game, the portals are there from the get-go, so the ship is not really necessary. I mean, sure, it's there because it's in the film, but whatever. I'm probably nitpicking at this point. Let's just move on to the next category.
So we've established how the game is set up, but how does it play?
The idea of collecting beacons in order to progress might already be reminding you of a few different games, but the control scheme are enough to give away exactly what Treasure Planet is either inspired by or ripping off, depending on how bitchy you want to be about it.
I made the joke already at the beginning of the video, so I might as well milk it to its core. Treasure Planet on the PlayStation 2 plays an awful lot like Jak and Daxter, released on the same console only a year prior.
And I don't just mean doing tasks and collecting stuff to unlock beacons, though it does have a similar vibe to collecting power cells in Jak and Daxter. Even moving around and attacking feels pretty damn similar. The jumps, kicks, punches, it's all pretty note for note. Is anybody seeing this? Sucks that it's missing that rolling jump move. That was one of my favorite moves to perform. I also noticed that it's a lot more broken up than in Naughty Dog's games. In Jak and Daxter, that game had all of its levels in one giant conversion that formed like a sense of unity. Treasure Planet's levels are more split apart, you know, akin to something like Sonic Adventure 2. Which is always a plus in my book. Jim also has a companion like Jak, but unlike Daxter, Morph is actually useful in-game. By jumping and pressing the attack button, Jim can use Morph as a hammer to strike down anything below the duo. But Morph is actually capable to do more tasks than that. By stepping on these activation pads, Morph can form into a variety of tools, like a pair of cyborg arms to smash through specific crates and doors, a glider to glide over wide gaps of space, or even long stretches of terrain. Boots that help Jim run at sonic speed and even run on top of lava. God damn, look how goofy he runs. He also has a jetpack to reach higher ground and a helping hand to flip switches. Wait a second, that hand looks awfully familiar. These transformations are all timed with the time limit usually just lasting long enough to complete whatever mission is associated with the beacon that you need to activate. Situational? Yeah, sure, but a lot of these abilities would just smash the game's structure in pieces if you could just run around with them all willy-nilly, so I don't hold that against the game at all. The way these missions and puzzles are all split up are fairly decently well-paced, as are the levels themselves. In fact, I don't think you're ever going to find yourself faced with a beacon challenge that you cannot complete. As you progress through the level, missions will appear, and you'll always have everything you need to finish them when they're presented to you. However, there are some missions that can span the whole course of the level, such as collecting 10 of these green energies. This is a fine mission type in and of itself, but what I find really aggravating about them is that whenever you die while collecting these things, they reset, meaning that if you find yourself working your way through an area or on the godforsaken circumstances that you find one of these missions spread throughout a whole stage and miss your footing during some platforming, you will have to go back and collect all of these little green shits all over again. I also want to appreciate that each level is built in a looping structure, meaning that if you find yourself at the end of a stage missing some beacons, it won't be too difficult to search what you're missing. It also helps with continuing the game since you can't just return to the level select without using the portal at the beginning of the stage. There's also a little bit of combat as well, but it's not really all that in depth, but luckily it's not too much of a pain in the ass. There will be some pirates and robots to beat down in each stage, and they actually went out of their way to create new designs for some of these enemies. But most of them are just a pushover. I mean, honestly, the hardest any of these enemies are gonna get is maybe like punching them multiple times, and some of them can be a bit more complicated with their attack patterns, but as soon as you see them once more, they're basically dead unless you're not paying enough attention.
Now that's all for the on-foot gameplay, but there is one element to the film that the developers simply could not resist on adding into the game. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the Solar Surfer levels. Let's play them.
The Solar Surfer that Jim uses in the movie is honestly such a badass looking device, and it would have been a major missed opportunity not to include it in the game. There's 8 stages split up throughout the game where Jim will ride his Solar Surfer and activate beacons by completing tasks just like he does on foot, except with missions that fit the fast-paced nature of the Solar Surfer. You got some races, chases, and some places where you have to rack up points by performing tricks on the Solar Surfer, but also collecting doubloons and green energy just like before. There's a nice amount of variety in all the levels too. You've got the industrial mines of Montresor, the lush green forests of Treasure Planet, the centroid of the Mechanism, and even the broken asteroid field surrounding the black hole in the supernova. The beacon missions you complete do a decent job at not only getting the best utility out of the Solar Surfer, but also using the environment of the given area to its best potential. Since we're talking about the gameplay, I might as well talk about its control. The controls are not bad per se. I personally think that some levels do a better job with those controls than others. The first few levels, the Surfer is just about perfect, with great control over speed, smooth handling, obstacles that let you take the advantage to drop your sail and slide through tight spaces, jumping over large areas, and overall offering a fun sense of speed and thriller. But as the game progresses, it becomes more apparent that the design of the later levels aren't exactly graceful about it. Corners are harder to take, level structure gets confusing as all hell, and some boil down to just looking too damn similar, and lots of death! 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 It's not all sour though. The final stage of the game is actually pretty nice because it feels like it's more suitable to the structure of the Solar Surfer. And there aren't any beacons to activate here. Your only objective is to speed your way to the end of the stage. It was definitely straightforward and felt perfect for a conclusion of this intergalactic adventure. But I'm not done yet! There's also 2 boss fights in the game that you're required to complete before you can make more progress, and they're alright to say the least. I mean, they're not great or anything, but they're adequate. I personally think the fight with Scroop is handled a little better with some decent attack patterns and some nice visuals to look at. but the one with John Silver has these weird-ass phases of being either bland or just ridiculously frustrating, and it also lasts a bit too long. Now for the completionist part. If you decided to run the extra mile and 100% the game, Treasure Planet does have a little bit to offer you. If you activate all 85 beacons in the game, you get a new title screen of the RLS Legacy, which is really nice, and you also unlock the music video for I'm Still Here, the main theme song of the movie, which is also a nice touch. Plus, in the credits, you also get to see the names given to all the enemies in the game as well. Wait, Tortilla Flats?
Wait, what do you mean somebody already made the joke? Wayne is boss? Come on. You son of a bitch.
Anyways, let's just go back and wrap up this category with the game's controls, specifically with Jim himself. He plays fairly well, though he's not exactly perfect. His moves are definitely similar to Jack, but his weight is ever so slightly different. It's not exactly game-shattering or anything, but it is something worth mentioning that it takes some time to get used to. Okay, time for the next category. Finally. Let's talk about the graphics of the game. In terms of visuals, it never gets dull. There was a lot of attention paid to details in the game, especially with the presentation. You can see how the visuals of the game were given a really good amount of care with a great sense of atmosphere added to each location of each stage. The Treasure Planet and Spaceport levels are one of my favorites to look at. I think the game as a whole has a really fun sense of adventure that really captures your interest of exploration. I will say though, character models are a different story. They're animated pretty well, but in terms of their structure, it's pretty messy. Some characters look more solid than others, but other characters like John Silver and Scroop I think suffer the most. Though the performances of the voice actors are well done at least, the majority of the cast from the movie return here, even with Martin Short as Ben and Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jim Hawkins. Can't say much about the writing, however. They just don't seem to have a lot of interesting dialogue here. There is a handful of fun interactions with the characters, like Dr. Doppler just being a fun, lovable dork, and Captain Amelia revealing that she used to ride a solo surfer of her own when she was younger. But there isn't really a lot of that here, and definitely nothing on the level of Jim and Silver's interaction in the film. I get it, it's a movie licensed game, so I'll just shut up from here. One more thing I'd like to appreciate is the amount of enthusiasm coming from Jim Hawkins. Every time you activate a beacon, Jim just screams his voice into the heavens, and it's absolutely hilarious. Imagine if you were playing this game late night and you activate a beacon and Jim just goes... Lastly, let's talk about the soundtrack of the game. It's actually one of my favorite parts of this entire package. Hell, one of my favorite soundtracks outside of the Sonic series. Now, most licensed games have a bad reputation of being rushed, messy, and crappy, but this game did not skimp out when it came to creating some great tracks for this intergalactic experience. It sounds extremely faithful to the atmosphere of the universe. Most of the time, I just play the soundtrack in the background while I'm editing videos or just filming projects because it always puts a smile on my face. Just take a listen to it. There was a lot of genuine effort put into this, and I have nothing but massive respect for that. You can tell that Bizarre Creations weren't just f***ing around on this one.
So now that I have all my thoughts on deck, do I recommend Treasure Planet for the PlayStation 2? Yes, definitely, absolutely. It's not really difficult to find a copy these days. You can find one on eBay for around $5 to $10. Sure, the game is not without flaws. It's a bit derivative and repetitive at times, and some of those Solar Surfer levels can put a hamper on things. Even though I didn't have any problems with them. But you have the ability to skip certain missions and even entire stages you find challenging, and it helps a lot. This is a game that's good, but not great, nor terrible. If you're any Disney fan who loves this movie as much as I do, you'll definitely get a good kick out of Treasure Planet for the PlayStation 2. As for the rating, I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. So that's Treasure Planet for the PlayStation 2. I love the movie, and I like the game. That's a wrap for today's episode of Mikey's Reviews. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, gamers. That's some good coke. I'm Supersonic Mikey. I review them and I tell you my thoughts. Think it's time for another visit. What do you say?